with no mics and webcam from attendee side.
No mics and webcams from attendee side. Okay, and now we are live, but do we have anybody in the session? How can I check that? If I go to private chat, I see 43 attendees. So please allow me to welcome you to this session in conversation with colleagues from the management of the European Research Council's executive agency. I'm here currently with two of my colleagues from the management team from our Department B, Angela Liberatore and Philipp Kippers. So I think what we would like to do, first of all, is to get to know a little bit who has joined us for this session. We see a list of names here. There seem to be 49 people who've connected, which is nice to have you with us. I see some of you using the chat to say hello. But we had prepared a couple of icebreaker questions using the poll functionality here on Big Marker. So let's try this out and see if it works. And I will start the first poll. So we would be interested to hear what kind of profile our participants this afternoon have. So there are a number of options that we came up with. So scientist, researcher, policy officer or consultant, student, a citizen interested in science, or staff from the EU institutions. And then there's an option G in case we weren't imaginative enough and you have some other kind of profile that we hadn't anticipated. So I see that there are quite a number of people who have voted, not quite everybody, I think. So we'll just wait another few seconds. But already I can see that over half of our participants this afternoon seem to be policy officers or consultants. Only rather few researchers or scientists, which is interesting. One of the main aims of this session was to explain, including to potential applicants, about the ERC's grant schemes, the application process, how the evaluation process works, which is obviously of particular interest to scientists and researchers who could be eligible for ERC grants. But for those of you who have a policy officer or consultant role, you may be intermediaries in that you're in contact with researchers and scientists. Okay, well, thank you very much for responding to this first of the three icebreaker polls that we've set up. No, that's not what I wanted to do. So let me go back to our queue. So we have a second question, which is to know where you come from geographically. So which of you are connecting today from somewhere in Europe, B, Asia, C, Africa, D, Oceania, Australasia, E, North America, and F, South America. I saw in the chat earlier on somebody mentioning that they were joining us from Jerusalem. So it looks like we have a very large contingent from here in Europe. I don't see any other options being selected for the moment. But that's certainly useful for us to know, as I'm sure my colleagues will explain shortly. The ERC's grant schemes are actually open to researchers from anywhere in the world. So although there is a requirement to come and perform the research in Europe, we are very much open to applications from researchers and scientists who are currently based outside of the EU and associated countries from the Horizon 2020 program. But interesting to see that basically, as far as this poll suggests, all of our audience this afternoon are joining us from here in Europe. Okay, so then a final icebreaker question, which I'll just launch now. So this session is about the European Research Council, and particularly about our funding schemes, about the different kinds of grants. And it would be useful, I think, for colleagues to know how familiar you are with ERC grants, so that we can make sure we pitch the conversation at the right level. So it seems like we have a pretty expert audience with us this afternoon. About 2/3 of you are very familiar already with ERC grants, so we don't need to go through the basics too much, although we shouldn't forget that some of the participants are perhaps a little bit less familiar, as we see from the poll results here. So I think let's move along now. I think, yeah, that's it in terms of the icebreaker. Great to get that feedback and to see that the different tools here on the Big Marker platform seem to be working okay. What I will do now is I will give my colleagues, Angela and Philippe, an opportunity to introduce themselves, say a little bit about their background and their role with the executive agency. And then our intention was not really to have a formal presentation, but for this to be more a kind of conversational exercise. So what I suggest we do is that we use the Q&A, question and answer functionality here on Big Marker. And any of you participating in this session are very welcome to post your questions in the Q&A, and we will try our best to cover them and refer them to the right person. By the way, there is also the possibility on Big Marker to vote on questions. So if you see that another participant has posted a question that you also would like to hear an answer to, you can certainly vote for that question, and then we see which ones are the most popular and we can prioritize accordingly. So then now what I will do is I will pass over first to Angela. So Angela, would you like to introduce yourself? As I said, explain what you do at the ERC, a little bit about your background, and then we can hear from Philippe and we can begin the Q&A with our participants after that. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you, Tony. With pleasure. My name is Angela Liberatore. My background is as a researcher in the social sciences and humanities with a first degree in philosophy, that's normally considered humanities, and a PhD in political sciences and sociology. Moved from doing research after my PhD into doing research management. So I was for many, many years in the Directorate General for Research and Innovation, at the time RTD, of the European Commission, working first on social aspects of the environment program and climate change, and then more on social and economic issues to court. And for 5 years now, I'm heading the Unit of Social Sciences and Humanities in the Scientific Department of ERC. And like our sister units in Life Sciences, headed by Philippe here, and Physical Sciences and Humanities, headed by Martin Penny, who might perhaps join us later. Our units are taking care of organizing the evaluation procedures of proposals submitted to ERC, as well as taking care of the monitoring of the projects which are funded by ERC. And of course, we deal with the aspects of communication, we do analysis of our projects and portfolio, both ex ante and ex post, and other activities. So I think that's enough for me, and I will hand over to Philippe.
Thank you. Can you hear me correctly? My name is Philipp Kippers. I'm the head of unit for the life sciences at the ERC Executive Agency. My background and training is biochemistry and cell biology. I did 11 years of research before joining Big Pharma and then the European Commission for 18 years, where I've been working for the Health Directorate before moving 1.5 years ago to the ERCA to head the life sciences. I have the pleasure to work with Angela, who is the head of the social science and humanities. And we also have a third colleague with Martin Penny, head of the physical science and engineering, who can't, but is temporarily not with us right now. I guess he may be able to join in a short while.
Thanks.
And we are
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, Philippe. Thanks, Angela. So we had a couple of questions come in the meantime on the Q&A. We had one question that was answered in writing. Let me just check who it was. Ashley Byrne was asking if we could type our names. I think you'll find it also on the RNI Days website in the description of this session, but I did pop the names there in the answer to the question in the Q&A. So I hope everybody is able to access that. If not, you can also use the chat if you're experiencing any difficulties. We have a couple of additional questions which have been posted now. I think probably the first one is for you, Angela. So Valerio Marconi asks which are the next ERC granting opportunities in philosophy, which will be the hot topics. What areas do you think philosophical research can be relevant to? So do you want to tackle that one, Angela?
Of course. Maybe I can ask you to put on the slide 13 with the description of the panel structure which we currently have, just to show a little bit how we tackle it. So the first thing, Valerio, is that I can give you my personal opinion on what areas I think philosophical research can be relevant to, and it's a very simple answer: everything. Call it artificial intelligence, dealing with pandemics, dealing with the notion of risk, progress, crisis, dealing with what is culture and so on. I mean, basically anything can be addressed also through philosophical research. But this is, of course, my personal opinion. When we come to the ERC, again, I cannot tell you about hot topics. I could tell my personal ideas about hot topics, but it doesn't matter at all, because one very important thing of the European Research Council, as compared, for example, to the mission and the global challenges, is that we are fully bottom-up. We do not prescribe topics that researchers should address. We do not put in the call what we think are the issues which are the most hot or the most critical or the most relevant. We just have, so to say, a panel structure which has been established, of course, by our scientific council of independent experts. And this is a structure to basically allow researchers in any field of research to apply to a panel where they can recognize, let's say, the area of work they are the closest to. And within that area, we have panel members who reflect different disciplines and approaches within disciplines who address the proposals which are submitted. Now, coming to philosophy, the panels where philosophy is, let's say, most directly addressed are the panel called SH4, the human mind and its complexity. Here, for example, there are descriptors, we call them, just to describe what are the areas covered under the big title, dealing with logic and philosophy of science kind of issues. But there are also aspects of philosophy, for example, political philosophy in the panel that deals with institutions and politics, and history of ideas, for example, is covered, and this can, of course, include also history of philosophical ideas in the study of the human path, SH6. So this is just to say that if you take just one discipline, it's covered mainly in one of the panels in our panel structure, but very often there might be part of the same discipline that are also covered by other panels. This is just to give the applicants the possibility to apply where they think they can fit best. And in our evaluation procedure, if a proposal, let's say, is between panels, that's also no problem, because we organize the so-called cross panel reviews, meaning asking members of other panels to contribute to the evaluation of that particular proposal, which might be in between panels. And this is the job of the panel chairs to agree on the need of this cross-panel reviews. So I hope that's enough as an answer.
Thanks, Angela. In the meantime, we've received and I've published some additional questions. Apologies, because I think I hadn't realized that I had to publish them before others could see them. We're all just getting used to this platform as we go along. So you should now see several questions that have been put by participants in this session. And there is the possibility, as I've said, to vote for questions. And I see immediately that there is one which has attracted a number of votes, which is has floated to the top of the list from Eric Ulleros. But I'm just wondering, before we go on to that, Angela, just with regard to what you were saying on the panel structure, there is a question, I don't know if you can see it, but from Bedana Bapuli on the panel structure for SH, and she asks if there may be some kind of mistake. I realize that the slide that we have here, unfortunately, may not give the full and latest picture. So perhaps the safest thing is for people to look on our website. But can you already clarify for Bedana and the other participants here with us this afternoon? Oh, have we lost Angela? I now see Jose Labastida.
Yeah, we lost Angela.
But unfortunately, we have lost Angela. Jose, can you see and hear us okay?
Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly well.
We can.
Okay, great.
We can.
Great.
Jose, we're just in the midst of dealing with some of the questions that participants have put, but would you like to just introduce yourself?
Okay, yes, I am Jose Labastida. I am the head of the unit that provides support to the Scientific Council of the European Research Council, as well as acting head of department of the Scientific Management Department. Okay.
Thanks, Jose. Welcome, and I'm glad to see you were able to join us despite some technical issues, I think, at the beginning of the session. Yeah. So let's return to our questions. When Angela comes back, we can go back to this question of the panel titles, particularly for SH. But there is a question from Eric Ulleros, which has attracted some interest from other participants, which is about remote interviews. And Eric asks, will you consider remote interviews even after COVID? So yes, indeed, we have been conducting remote interviews due to the challenges of getting panels together physically. I don't know, perhaps Jose, would you like to come in on that question?
Sure, yeah. Thank you, Tony, and it's a pleasure to address this question. Okay, as Tony said, we are running interviews remotely. We finished the interviews in the call Synergy Grants 2020, and this week we have started with the interviews in step 2 of the Consolidator Grant call, okay? Of course, we are doing this, and in fact, we have been running all the panels remotely of mainly all the calls of 2020. Only a few panels at the beginning of in starting grants were running in the premises of the ERC, but the rest have been done remotely, including interviews, as I said, for synergy grants and consolidators. What about the future? Well, we don't know, okay? One of the things that we are going to do after we finish the calls of this year, okay, in these exceptional situations, is to assess what is the opinion, especially of our panel members, relative to the quality of the process of evaluation when this is done remotely, and then we will take it from there. The first, let's say, feedback that we have received is that they think that physical presence, in particular in the case of interviews, is important, that the evaluation is done much better, okay, when this physical presence occurs. But as I said, okay, we are going to do a thorough assessment of this. We will share the findings with the Scientific Council, that in the end is the body that has the last word on whether we should continue with this practice, or in normal times we go to the standard practice of having interviews with physical presence of the panel members as well as the interviewees. Okay.
Thanks very much, Jose. In the meantime, we've had quite a number of other questions that have come in. I have posted a link in the chat to the page on our website where you have the full information about the changes to the panel structure, the titles of the panels and so forth. So you have the up-to-date information in the chat. Thanks, Jose, for answering this question from Eric about the remote interviews. The next question in terms of popularity. Very good. Angela is back. So Angela, in the meantime, I have posted the link to the information on our website about the changes to the panel structure and titles. So I think we can consider that one is dealt with. So the next one we have is from Ximena Goldberg, who asks, what is the expected timeline for the ERC starting grant call? So the next one being in 2021. Perhaps would it be useful if I try to find our slides that we have in reserve regarding the expected timetable for the. Should I do that?
Yeah, it's slide 12.
Yes, and who might like to just comment on that?
Well, I can comment on that. Okay, yes, as Tony shows, the expected date is for the deadline in starting grants 2021 is March 9. Okay, I say the expected date because I mean all these dates are provisional in the sense that of course we have to have the approval of Horizon Europe, the whole framework program for the next 7 years, as well as the work program of ERC. We expect this happening before the end of the year, and if this is the case, with the dates shown in this slide will be the ones that are applying to all the calls that we are planning to run in 2021. Okay, remember we typically the deadline for starting grants is in the month of October of the year N-1 for the work program of year N. Okay, due to the transfer from one framework program to the other. Okay, we have an anomalous year in the sense that all the deadlines have been shifted, okay, because we cannot have a calls launch before the work program is approved. So this is the situation for next year. Our plan is in the coming years to move the dates, the deadlines backwards. So in 2023, we will reach, let's say, the standard dates for the calls that are the ones that, for instance, we have in 2020. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. In the meantime, we've had some other questions coming in. I will try to group them, but for the moment, I will be strictly democratic and I will take them in order of the number of votes, because I know there were some more about some of the issues we've discussed, but we can come back to those in a minute. So let's go to the question from Marco Bargagna, who asks whether the ERC proposal template will be the same or similar to the one of the 2020 calls. So I assume that Marco is referring to the upcoming calls, which will be under the new framework program Horizon Europe. So what can applicants expect in terms of the templates when they come to apply in the future for grants?
Well, in simple terms, the answer is that it will be very similar. Okay, there may be some small changes here and there, but I mean the main aspects of the submission templates will be very similar to the ones of 2020. We may add some additional information here and there, but very minor. Okay, the message is, well, basically it's continuity here. Okay. We will have also continuity in the evaluation process of ERC. There are not significant changes as well as in the submission forms, because after all, what is in the submission form is what will be evaluated by our panels. Okay. So the message is still they are not ready, but don't expect significant changes. And continuity is the key word here.
And then we have a couple of questions relating to interviews. Megan Coombs asks about the introduction of interviews for advanced grants and asking what the rationale is for that. And Nikolaus asks whether we are planning to reintroduce presentation slides for ERC interviews. So yes, sorry, I wonder if that's again for you, Jose, but those were the couple of questions that have come through regarding interviews.
Fine, okay. So yes, as was pointed out, in Advanced Grant 2021, we will have interviews for first time in this funding scheme. Advanced Grant has been scheme running for many years without interviews. Why? What is the rationale? Okay, this is a decision of the Scientific Council, because in general, they think that the quality of the evaluation is better, okay, if they are done with interviews. I mean, the experience that we have accumulated over the years for starting and consolidators show that, okay. And in the past, the Scientific Council thought that for advanced grant, they were not needed because, well, these are very senior people that are well known in the community. Maybe this aspect, I mean, the aspects that are addressed in the interview are not needed. However, okay, in the last 3 years, and also back in 2011 and 12, we ran another funding scheme that is the Symmetrical funding scheme, where, okay, the standard or the most common profile in those calls are senior people, okay? After the experience accumulated of those calls in the past 11 and 12 and the last 3 calls of Synergy, the common understanding of the members of the Scientific Council is that interviews, they really add a value, okay, even if the people presenting the proposals are also senior researchers, okay. So once this observation is there, okay, this was discussed at the level of the council, and it was decided to also include interviews in the assessment of the proposals and the PIs for advanced grant, purely motivated by the success and also the let's say the assessment of the quality of the evaluation that they have done in Synergy grants, especially getting all the feedback from panel members that were involved in the evaluation. So this answers the first question, why interviews in 2021. And the second question was about?
The second question, let me find it again. Yes, are we planning to reintroduce presentation slides?
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, well, I mean, in general, the presentations should be done with slides, okay? In this to call Synergy and consolidators that we are running under the pandemic situation, okay, the technical challenges are huge, okay? So after a thorough assessment, it was decided that it was not worth to risk the potential interruptions of the evaluations due to technical problems linked to the use of slides or some visual support for the presentation. And this is why it was decided to run them without it. But this doesn't mean, okay, that this will not be the standard practice with interviews with physical presence, okay? It's just a kind of unique situation where we are doing this, okay? Thank you.
Very good. I have to admit this is fun, but also quite challenging because I'm trying to sort of publish questions and answer a few while we're going. So multitasking apparently is a myth. So I'm probably doing several tasks, but none of them properly. But I'm doing my best anyway. In the meantime, there is a question that has floated to the top by Anonymous. Welcome, Anonymous. Who asks, will you ever consider a 2-stage submission process? So we have a 2 or sometimes 3-stage evaluation process, but this participant is asking about 2-stage submission process, which I assume means that you would first of all submit the summary, and then only if you get through to the second stage, a fuller research proposal. So who would like to tackle that one?
Well, this is a quite common question. Angela, you want to go for it, or?
If you want a break, I can get started and then you continue.
Yeah.
Well, it's true that we have two parts of the proposal: the part B1 and part B2. One with the synopsis, the other with the full description. And we have been asked several times. Well, we, the scientific council, about could we just have the B1 basically, and only get into the B2 if the proposal go to step 2. Now, there were long discussions. Surely Jose heard many more discussions before I joined. And there were the following comments. One is that actually for researchers to write a good synopsis, a good B1, which is evaluated in step 1, they actually need most of the time, at least, to have quite good and clear ideas about the overall plan, the overall methodology, the risks and plans to deal with those, particularly in frontier research. And it's by doing that that they can then select what gets into the synopsis without repeating, of course, what is in the main part of the proposal. So some people consider that actually to actually do a good step 1 application, one needs really to do the overall work. The other is the time. By the time step 1 is over and applicants are informed on whether the proposal goes to step 2 or not, there will be very, very little time for applicants to submit the full proposal, because as soon as step 1 is over, the panel members look at the part B2 in view of the step 2 interviews. And remote referees are also identified, the ones who are, if you like, the specialist on each and every topic of each and every proposal. So they might get one proposal or 2 or 3 in a panel, depending on the proposal and the specialization. So all this happens basically immediately. Otherwise, the step 2 would need to be distantiated for a longer time than it is the case now. And of course, the whole evaluation process would last longer, and the granting, of course, would also be delayed. So there are both aspects, one which is more about the content, if you like, and one which is more about the timing of the evaluation procedure. Now, those are the two I remember, Jose. If there is any other aspect that has been addressed and to decide to just go ahead as we are doing, you're welcome.
Well, the other aspect is, as many of you know, okay, the quality of the evaluation is very important for us, and of course, to do a good job requires a lot of people, okay, and to have also a number of proposals to be evaluated, to be dealt with, that is reasonable, okay. Our experience in the only case that we have this 2-stage process to submit a proposal, that was back in 2007, is that the number of proposals grows enormously, okay. And I remember back in 2007, we had close to 9,000 proposals just for a single funding scheme, for a starting grant for the first stage. Okay, and the typical amount that we get now with all the calls, the 4 funding schemes is even lower than that number. So this is also important. I mean, to be able to have a good quality panel members fully dedicated to the job and not exhausting them, as well as, of course, the support staff. We need to manage a reasonable number of proposals, and this has to be contained. Okay. On top of the issues that Angela mentioned, that are very much on board with the general opinion of the Scientific Council on the matter. Okay, thank you, Tony.
Tony, you're frozen.
wow.
Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
I hear you.
Working okay.
We can hear you. You don't move,
Okay.
but you speak.
Yeah, you are immobile, but we can hear you.
Okay. In any case, no, I wanted to put the question from Isabel Fischer, who asks, unfortunately, our colleague Martin Penny from the physical sciences and engineering domain was unable to connect. Perhaps, Philipp, you could tackle this one, because Isabel asks how applied science fits into the ERC. And perhaps you could illustrate that from the life sciences domain.
I think that we, in general, we also have a slide on this one that we can maybe also project if need be. But I think that it's in general a mistake to label too much the ERC as being fundamental versus applied. As long as you have excellent research that goes frontier, that address things which are unexplored, that is risky and risk-taking, that is daring, and they may not be funded in different, other type of funding scheme, that it could be fundamental research or applied research, doesn't matter. I mean, as long as it is excellent, I'm convinced that the experts evaluating those proposals will see the interest of that. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the portfolio that we have in terms of ERC projects, you will see that we have actually quite a good bunch and a good amount of projects which are funded with more applied science, actually. So we are open to anything. And as long as the research is of high quality and is of risk-taking and frontier, that's the most important thing. And this is against what the experts are briefed for the evaluation. This is what you need to keep in mind. And if you look in particular, for example, in the domain, I don't know if we can project again the different panels that we have, but if you look in the physical science and engineering domain, you will see that we have a lot of those panels with a lot of applied science. It's the same even in the LS domain, where we have also one specific panel on biotech and bioengineering, for example, with a lot of applied sciences. I also would like to mention a final item is that you have seen that we have a lot of different funding schemes, starting grants, consolidated grants, advanced grants, synergy grants, but we also have what is called a proof of concepts. And this is where a grantee who is already benefiting of an ERC grant estimates that they could have one knowledge on one new methodology that could be put more into practice to be exploited, potentially commercialized. They can apply for a proof of concept. Those are not big grants, it's 150,000 euro, but it helps to build a business plan, it helps to build an exploitation plan and to start the first steps towards those specific items. So I think that's an important thing to clarify as long as ERC is concerned. It's not a war between fundamental versus applied. It's really people are free to submit whatever they want if they think this is a very great research, and our experts will welcome this type of research provided that it is of an excellent level.
I see that Tony seems to be there, but I cannot see the video.
No.
So in terms of the questions, I was off for a moment. So maybe we can see whether the ones highest were all addressed.
I think the one of Catherine Fritsch is important for the next calls for proposal. So Catherine is asking for the next year's starting grant call. Is it already clear what will be the cut-off date for the 7-year rule after PhD to be able to apply? Will it be as before the 1st of January 2021? Jose, will you want to answer this question?
Okay, yeah, I will. Yeah, thanks for this question, because I think it's important. Okay, in order to not affect applicants due to the change of the deadlines for the calls, as I explained before, due to the change from one framework program to another, okay, it was decided to keep the dates for the counting of the eligibility windows for the starting grants as well as for consolidators the same, namely January 1st, 2021 in this case. So even if the deadlines have changed, okay, the reference date to compute your eligibility, okay, will be as normal as in any other calls. As you know, since several years ago, we decided to fix always January 1st of the year end in work program end, okay? So this will be maintained also for the 2021 calls, even that if the deadlines will be shifted as was explained before.
Thanks, Jose. I'm back again. At least I hope I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, you are. You are. We can hear you. We were
Okay.
answering the question of Katrin Fritz.
Katrin, yeah. I noticed there was another question on the eligibility window for starting grants from Eva, who asked whether we might consider extending the duration of the eligibility window for an additional year or two above the current 7 years. Is anybody interested?
Well, again,
I don't see the question, sorry.
It's a bit further down, but
yeah. It's the question of the window. Actually, this was discussed once again quite recently by the Scientific Council. And for the time being, the windows do remain for the work program 2021 for sure. There were discussions both about actually the eligibility window of starting grants and also for COG grants. The one for COG was because there was the impression that some COG grantees who are also, let's say, in the eligibility of the 10 track record of advanced grants could suffer some disadvantage. But actually looking at the time of submissions and success rates related to the time of submission, there is no pattern that seems to indicate that if one applies in the middle of the range, is disadvantage in success rate as compared to, let's say, those closer to the end of the window. And actually the same holds true for starting grantees. So from that point of view, it was seen that the success rate for applicants who apply a bit earlier in the window and those who apply towards the end of the window didn't really have a variability. So for the time being, the Scientific Council decided to stay in the windows we have. There is maybe something that one day we will need to address, but that will come a bit later, and we don't know where we will be. But of course, there is an issue with people who are now in their education, doing now their PhD or doing now their studies, and it might be that for some of those people, this COVID year will be a little bit of a lost year, and this is maybe something that not only us but future agencies will need to factor in terms of track records. But I think this is a bit of a more forward-looking visionary perspectives. Maybe it's more for our colleagues, for example, dealing with Erasmus and Marie Sklodowska-Curie, because they will be the ones who will see more quickly whether the education path of people in PhD and earlier is affected by the COVID situation. So for the time being, I think this is where we are with the windows of eligibility in starting grant and also in COG.
Thanks, Angela. There's a question which has risen to the top from Margarita Castronovo on quite a specific issue. Margarita asks whether the ERC would consider a reply to the reviewer's comment mechanism ahead of interview, because that could be something that could help applicants justify their statements before entering the interview room.
I think I leave it to Jose, but I think I should make a comment. Our participants are so smart because they are asking questions that the Scientific Council has been struggling with and discussing you know, more than once. So on that tone, you know, Margarita, good question. Do you want to reply, Jose, or
As Angela said,
on the rebuttal discussion?
right, this has been discussed by the Scientific Council several times, okay, whether or not to introduce a rebuttal mechanism in the evaluation process. Finally, the decision was no, okay, and the main reason is that we have interviews, and now since 2021, we have interviews in all the funding schemes. So they consider that the interview is the opportunity for the PIs to address the questions. Many of the questions that are interviews, they are triggered by the reviews that the panel members, they have access to the reviews done by more referees and of course by themselves before the step 2 or the step 3 in the case of Synergy. They build mainly from there, and they think, well, that this is the opportunity for the PIs to answer those questions. You could say, okay, if we get the questions earlier, we can prepare them better, okay? But for the Scientific Council, something that is very important is that the PI himself or herself is assessed, okay? So they want to make sure that he or she is the person answering the questions, okay? So, and there is no better way that in the interview, okay, these questions are addressed to them and the PI immediately address them with the best answer possible. So the answer is, has been considered, and so far, this is not foreseen in the near future, certainly not in the work program 2021.
Thanks, Jose. I noticed there are a couple of questions relating to Synergy grants. If I can find them again, scrolling through, there was Tamsin. Where is Tamsin? Sorry.
There's also a question on Dora.
Yes. Okay. Would you want? Sorry, Tamsin here. What does the future hold for the ERC Synergy grant scheme? The availability of and budget for this funding scheme has fluctuated markedly over the years. And then there was a question from Stefan. Will the Synergy grant reappear at a later stage in Horizon Europe? So, who would like to?
I answered the easy one. Yes, they should reappear in the Work Program 2022. And I leave the more complicated one about the fluctuation of the budget to Jose or Philip. Okay,
I can address also this one. Okay, the budget for Synergy. Okay, first, we ran Synergy in 2012 as pilot course, okay? We learned a lot from there. After the thorough assessment done by the Scientific Council, it took a couple of years, the year 13 and 14, it was decided to launch again with some modifications in the evaluation process to motivated by the lessons learned. As soon as there is enough budget, okay, in the overall budget of ERC to be able to provide a significant amount to the Synergy grant scheme without removing too much money from the other calls, okay? So this happened in 2018. That was the first call in this reincarnation of Synergy. We just finished the third call in 2020. And the budget, okay, well, we started with a budget much bigger than the one in 2012 and 11. That was only 150 million. It was absolutely insufficient. The success rate on those calls was below 5%. And then, well, we had the first call with a reasonable success rate, and from that it was extrapolated what could be the number of submissions in the 2020 call. But well, the analysis was not being ratified by the fact that we got many more proposals than expected. Okay. And in the end, the implication of this is that the success rate in the 2020 call is going to be low. It's going to be below 8%. And of course, now the council will do a thorough revision of what has been the behavior of people applying for Synergy to try to estimate what would be the demand in the call of 22, that, as Angela said, in the Work Program 22 is foreseen that CDD will be back, okay, as one of our funding schemes, to try to, again, to have a reasonable success rate as well as high as in the other calls. Okay.
Thanks, Jose. Just a technical remark. I've been unpublishing questions that have been answered orally, since that seems to be the only way in the system of clearing up the ones that we still need to deal with. So if you're a participant who's posted a question and you see it disappeared, that's just simply because I've kind of archived them in that way. Indeed, as Philippe mentioned, there is a question which has now risen to the top about the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment. Philippe, did you want to come in on that one?
I can say something on this one. It's as you know, that's one item which is discussed currently by the Scientific Council. We expect that they will come back with a decision in the next months about this implementing or not this San Francisco Declaration. But that being said, independently of the decision of the Scientific Council, what I would like to emphasize is that our panels already work by implementing already most of the provisions of this DORA, in the sense that we don't insist too much on metrics, and we really try to always brief the panels to be careful that what is to be assessed, for example, in assessing the excellence of the applicant, is about what are the experience in terms of frontier research, in terms of experiencing risk-taking research, much more than just by measuring metrics or measuring where, in which journals they may have published or not. This is something on which we are very attached, and I'm convinced that if in addition the Scientific Council would approve the DORA declaration for the ERC, this would even be reinforced. But this is something which is already pretty much implemented at this stage. I don't say it's perfect. We always can be better. We can always improve, but those provisions are already quite well implemented.
And I think that we can also say that this is actually nicely happening across domains. Well, here, you know, I'm in social sciences, Philipp in life sciences, and okay, we have no Martin here, but Jose is a physicist. And actually, what we also notice is that, of course, scientific communities are also a bit diverse within and across the domains. So, for example, if I may, a mathematician will never use high impact factors. An economist, particularly an econometrician, might be tempted to do so, while an historian would definitely not do so, because they publish books, monographs, mainly, rather than articles in high impact factors journals. And I think in life sciences, Philipp, you are best placed to also see maybe some diversity in the behavior of different communities. But this is also why, in the attempt to, of course, respect the diversity in science among the many diversities in our society, it's for the panels to, you know, to benchmark with the state of the art and how to say, spirit and culture of their communities. But as ERC, indeed, we tell people we are not interested in measuring quotations and other metrics. Please see what the scientist is doing in the field of reference, or reach into other fields, depending on what is relevant. So this is actually something we have been doing probably even before DORA actually happened. So if as Philipp said, if DORA will be endorsed by the Scientific Council, the effect will be to emphasize something which is already happening in the panels, but maybe reinforcing the message also towards the community, towards the applicants, because it's true that sometimes we hear applicants being very anxious about, well, if I do not have impact factor X and Y and so on, maybe I should not apply, and maybe there is a bit too much of self-censorship happening in some communities. We see in some panels, for example, having fewer applications than others, which might reflect the community itself, or might reflect some aspects of self-filtering that might be also induced by expectations and using metrics that are not really what ERC panels are trying to do. So if you can help spreading the message, you are most welcome to help us spreading the message to the applicants.
Yeah, I'm insisting on this one because we have been, at least in the life science, participating to some workshops with young postdoctoral researchers, explaining to us that they were a bit cold feet with sending an application to the ERC because they don't have one or two papers as a first author in Nature or Science. And we really were quite strong in answering, this is not what is going to be evaluated when your application is sent. What will be evaluated is the excellence of your science, not the metrics of your papers. And I think this is something really important to pass as a message. And we pass this message to the applicant, we pass this message to the experts, and I think the Scientific Council also insists on that one. So it's, I just would like to emphasize this aspect, because otherwise it would refrain, and it may give a lot of, of cold feet for some applicants to submit an application, in a non-justified way.
I'm sorry to...
You're frozen again, Tony.
We seem... hello?
Hello, yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Hello?
Who are the winner for the last questions we can answer?
Sorry, I was just saying we're running short of time, so I don't think we're going to be able to get through everything. At the moment, the top question is again about the evaluation process, and Lisa asks, what is the reason that in the remote interviews applicants are not in various panels? Perhaps there's also a question from Alessio asking if we're considering reviewing the evaluation process, because he was surprised to see in our last annual report that applicants who resubmit are not more successful. He was surprised to see that. Perhaps what, I don't know, Jose, if you want to try fielding those two questions regarding the evaluation process, and perhaps in the meantime, Philippe and Angela and I can just have a look through the list and see if there are any questions we can just reply to in writing before we have to end the session in a couple of minutes' time.
Okay, I think about the issue of using slides in the way we did our slides in the recent step 3 and now the current step 2 COC evaluation process. I think we answered it before, okay, in that question related work with the future use of slides in interviews. So I think that is basically answered. Then there is this question by Alessio that is addressing the resubmissions. Okay, well, I don't know. I mean, you mentioned in our report that you were surprised by the high number of applicants that did not succeed in improving their score while resubmitting the proposal. Okay, well, some of them they don't, but there are others that yes. In fact, our statistics also show that the chances, I mean, this is in average, of course, the chances for someone resubmitting a proposal to get a grant are higher, okay, than the ones that they submit for first time, okay. There is also a question about just reading about the budget, I mean the administrative forms for the budget description that we changed several years ago. Yes, the reason for this was to be aligned with other submission systems within the research family, the other programs of the European Commission. We have received some comments by many of you that you consider that the old system where the budget was in part B2 was better. Okay, we are trying to improve how the budget is introduced in the current form. Okay, that is the one that we use in the reusing also in 2021. Try to facilitate this work, so you find it as good or as easy as it was when we had it in B2. Okay, maybe the other questions that Tony.
I think Jose, I'm not sure if we will be cut off, but I see that it's 3 o'clock, and I believe that there are other sessions starting, so I think we should wrap up. I would like to thank very much all of the participants. I just looked and I saw that you were 134 just now, so a good number of people connecting. Thanks very much to my colleagues for making themselves available to try to answer your questions. We've done our best to answer as many of them as we could, but I apologize to anybody who did put a question we weren't able to come to. Just a small promotion. We do also have a session on Thursday morning from 11 to 12 o'clock with the President of the European Research Council, Jean-Pierre Bourguignon, and one of our Vice Presidents, Fabio Zwirner. This should be a less technical conversation than the one we've had this afternoon, but nevertheless, if you would like to connect to that session at 11 o'clock on Thursday morning, there will be another opportunity to put questions directly to our President and one of our Vice Presidents. So we're 1 minute over time.
There is a session on COVID to be chaired by Mr. Philipp Kippers very soon
later this
well.
afternoon. Yes, absolutely.
So the motto for that is that the frontier research shows that we can address also COVID without ever having mentioned COVID before, because it didn't exist at the time those proposals were submitted to ERC. So it's one way of showing that if we leave scientists free to choose their topics, probably they might anticipate some issues that will be with us one way or another. But in the meantime, we are getting applications also specifically about COVID, of course, as any other agency.
Interesting to see that point of view.
So anyone curious about what ERC can offer or is already offering on COVID, you can hear from the session that Philipp will chair soon.
Yeah. That is a very appropriate note to end on. So please do tune into that session later this afternoon. There's also information on the ERC website about other sessions we're organizing, including a session with Nobel and Kavli Prize winners tomorrow afternoon, and the session I mentioned with our President and Vice President. So thanks again for joining us this afternoon. And I do not think I'm empowered to end the session. I don't know quite who does that. I assume one of our tech support colleagues. Okay. Matthias is closing us down. So
in 5 seconds.